welcome everyone to an Unearthly podcast live. This is our fourth in-person edition, coming once again from Geek.Kon. I am Bill Sylvia, also known as the Man in Black, and with me here are Mad Matt Winchell.
There's always one of us missing.
Aaron Romeo Moonberg.
Husband.
Tim the Enchanter Sheridan.
Rock on!
And I'm sorry, I don't know the Muppet's name.
Hi, Magnus.
And coming live via Discord is Randy Ronson McCulloch.
Yeah, and I'm only coming from, about 10, 15 minutes away. I would have been there in person, but my heart decided to give out about 3 weeks ago, so I have to stay back and recover.
Unfortunately, unlike our new doctor, he doesn't have a spare.
Why doesn't the human body have a spare? We've got 2 kidneys.
Really could use
We've got 2 lungs.
Yeah. We've got 2 halves of the brain, which can function independently if necessary.
So why didn't the human body come with a binary vascular system? I've been trying to figure that out for about 3 weeks now.
Would make things much easier at the moment.
Yes, it would.
Alright, so if this were a Twitch edition, we would be going over this week's news, but we tend not to do that in person because it's really not that interesting for a panel.
Yeah, and I mean, the news is kind of a hot and cold thing. Some weeks it's absolutely going to take us all the time in the universe to do news, and the other times, if you really tried, we could get it over with in 15 minutes. Needless to say, we don't try.
Some people like padding more than others.
And that's the secret of our success.
I thought it was colossal tangents.
That too.
Alright, so the purpose of our panel today is to talk not only about the new actress cast for the Doctor, Jodie Whittaker, but about factors that may affect how successful her run as the Doctor is, including the new showrunner, things of that nature.
I was going to say, it was going to be kind of hard to talk about Jodie Whittaker without talking about Chibnall.
Right. I would like to start off with, the actress herself before we go into some of the more complicated matters. Matt, what have you seen with Whittaker so far?
I wanted to see one of her older movies, but I did not even get a chance because all of a sudden I got really busy the last couple of weeks.
Right, yeah, Con Prep.
Okay. Yep.
Have you seen anything with her yet? Or?
Not as of right now, no, other than the trailer.
I have seen 2 out of the 3 seasons of Broadchurch, so yes, I have at least seen a good chunk of both Chibnall's writing and managing of a series, and Jodie's acting. So,
Tim?
I have seen a few episodes of Broadchurch. I wanted to watch some episodes to get a handle on her and Chibnall's writing.
How about you, Randy?
Like Aaron, we watched the entire 2 seasons of Broadchurch, and it was, for me, really going through there trying to find what moment Chibnall looked at Jodie Whittaker and said she would make a great Doctor, and it took me 2 seasons to find it.
Yeah. I've managed to get through all 3 seasons of Broadchurch as of, I think, Wednesday night, right before flying down here. And I watched half of Attack the Block in my hotel room earlier today. I actually also found...
Well, if we want to see the 3rd season of Broadchurch, Netflix has to get its act together.
BBC America actually, they have the latter half of it right now. They don't have the first half anymore. But I managed to catch it all through bbcamerica.com.
Every time I try using bbcamerica.com, it kind of staggers on me. I remember trying to watch Dirk Gently on that, and that was terrible.
One thing I did recently discover is that through Broadchurch, Jodie Whittaker is not using her natural voice, much like David Tennant as the Doctor. She actually has a Yorkshire accent, which people might recognize as Sean Bean, aka Ned Stark. So she, that accent, will probably have some sort of effect, at least on her performance in Broadchurch. How different that makes it compared to her regular performances, up in the air.
And whether she'll be using that accent or not.
True.
We'll remind you, David Tennant spent the entire time he was the Doctor doing an estuary accent when he has a Scots accent.
Right.
You don't believe us? Watch DuckTales.
Yeah. Okay, so there's been mainly one scene in Broadchurch that I think we've pretty much agreed on as being a good example of a Doctor scene.
Yeah.
By the way, does anybody in the audience mind Broadchurch spoilers? Okay.
And that's a warning for the recording that, yes, we will probably go into spoiler territory, or did they care? I'm sorry, I'm not there. I can't see it.
They all shook their heads. Unfortunately, I could not find this clip on YouTube because I wanted to not only rewatch it, but have the potential of playing it here. I could not find it, and I wasn't about to torrent the episode just to find the clip.
Yeah, I could see that would be an issue. Yeah, it's clear in the season finale of the second episode.
Right.
You mean second
season,
Yeah.
sorry. Of the series finale of the second series. Not there's still one season to go after that, but that was how they were wrapping things up for series 2, and it was kind of an epic Doctor-ish speech moment.
Right. Yeah, go ahead.
Where she's basically shouting down somebody who had done something wrong, had gotten basically put on trial, acquitted, and tried to come back to town. I'm not going to say who because that is spoilers. But it was just kind of the get the hell out of our town was the essential part of it.
Right.
But it was said very eloquently.
Yeah, and it was even written as a Doctor sort of speech, and it was I forget some of the exact wordings, but we could kill you, we could throw you off the cliff, but we're going to be better than you. We're going to we're going to do the right thing in whatever way we can, and and you're still not going to win.
And before this, I've sat through these 2 seasons going, why the heck did Chibnall pick her? Because she spends almost the series up to that point being a total wallflower charisma-wise.
Yeah, she's a very reactive character, and I don't think that's the acting. I think that's the way it was, the way it was directed and the way the character was written. But it does make it very difficult based on that to judge anything. That scene in particular it shows some personality. There's also a scene in episode 3, and in season 3, and I don't want to go into the spoilers of that either. But it kind of felt a little 10th Doctor-ish. It was I'm not going to lecture you about this. Actually, I am, and here's why. And that was a little Doctor-ish, although not quite as powerful of a moment.
Okay. My big thing is a qualifier to be the Doctor is you have to have a force of personality. You have to have a certain gravitas about you. And if you think back on all the previous Doctors, almost every single one of them had it. The early 2 Doctors would turn it on and off at will, but they still had it.
Right.
3rd Doctor had it going pretty much from the moment he went on screen to the moment he went off screen. I mean, that's John Pertwee. I mean, he was basically James Bond as the Doctor. Tom Baker was of a similar vein, although it was a different force of personality, it was always there. You saw him on screen, you were immediately drawn to his figure. The only one I think who never had it was Peter Davison.
Right.
He never really had that epic raw to himself. He always kind of felt a little bit wishy-washy compared to the forces of the other Doctor.
I think that might have been.
And then you've got Colin Baker, who had it in all the wrong ways. And then the 7th Doctor, Sylvester McCoy, could turn it on and off.
Yeah.
And then Paul McGann had it. Eccleston definitely had it. Tennant definitely had it. acting on his character. They're completely non-issue compared to this.
And Peter Capaldi is just a force of nature.
Yes. That's kind of the thing. As the Doctor, you are kind of almost like a force of nature. Or at least you have to be able to assume that method of doing it. So I was looking for a moment where you looked at her and went, okay, that's a force of nature.
Right.
And I only saw the one scene, so that kind of made me a little bit leery. But we know that she can pull it off now.
Since I'm the only one watching, I'll just talk at least up here. Talk a little on Attack the Block. What I mainly see of her there is sort of a companion personality. She seems very much like a Donna Noble, a Lucy Miller, an Amy Pond sort of personality there, with some F-bombs. But yeah, not quite a Doctor, but definitely a more dynamic force than Ruth Latimer from Broadchurch.
Oh, come on. If Catherine Tate had it going, she could be a Doctor-grade personality.
Anybody in the audience have any experiences with Jodie Whittaker you want to chime in on?
What else has she been in?
Not much.
She's been in a bit. She's only really been acting since about the mid-2000s. So we only have about 10 years worth of stuff.
Whatever you feel like it.
Mostly she's done movies, though she's done a lot of little bits and pieces in a lot of British series. Nothing really stands out to me, though, as something that would be well known until you get to Broadchurch. I'm looking at her movies, and even her movies are still all not memorable. So,
of course, some of them might be a little better known in Britain, but it's a little hard to tell.
yeah.
I'm personally not really familiar with any of them. I didn't know about Attack the Block until someone mentioned it on Twitter.
Yeah, I only really get most of the stuff that I get through osmosis from stuff we learn about in like doing the ratings for the podcast, or stuff I see on BBC America. I don't get a lot of the stuff that, just isn't popular or good enough to make it across the pond. And I'm thinking a lot of this stuff was kind of that grade of material.
Right.
Well, either that or they figured there wouldn't be an audience because they think we're idiots.
Yeah.
That's true.
They're getting better at that.
They're getting better at it now, but...
You would think that, but before they brought Broadchurch to the States, they tried to remake it with a different accent because they didn't think Americans could get it.
Yeah, that seems to be their thing. Either we don't like it or remake it.
Is a long-standing habit, and it's not because they don't think they get it. They just think that it would, they could make it better and swing it on network television. The only network that carries British imports in America on broadcast television is PBS. And it usually takes a while for it to come across, and it's usually either something that's going to fit on mystery or actually those are the same thing now. I'm sorry, I'm old.
It's okay to have its...
I remember when there was mystery on Thursday nights and Masterpiece Theater on Sunday. But now they only have, Masterpiece Mystery or something like that. They merged the program.
And a few weeks before that, you only had radio, and then newfangled telly wasn't in the house.
No. I am not older than color television. I was born in the 70s, and that's old enough.
We're just older than flat screens.
I am older than flat screens.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I had to dial up internet.
I am older than computers, but I am older than the personal computer, but just barely.
I remember when we had to wrap tinfoil around the antenna on top of the TV set.
Yes.
I remember that.
Our giant TV we could sit on top of.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yes, but did you have the giant TV that you could sit on top of and had a screen that you had to be about 3 inches in front of it to see?
Yes.
My grandfather still had one of those. The first time I watched Doctor Who, I was watching on his old black and white huge console TV with a tiny screen. So I actually had the 60s feel.
I inherited one of those from my grandmother. I think it was the first TV that I personally had because we didn't need it in the living room.
I think my grandfather bought that when he came back from World War II, and it basically sat in his bedroom ever since.
But it still kept working.
Yeah, my uncle is a TV repairman, or was anyway. So if it broke, he'd call his son to come in and fix it.
But he could fix it.
Well,
Nowadays most of those
was
TVs
just
you can't really
vacuum tubes
fix.
and other stuff.
They don't really make them to fix anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't then. In the 80s, you could still find parts.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what I'm saying. They could fix it then. Nowadays, like, oh, the flat screen's broken. Garbage.
Yeah.
Buy a new one.
Yeah.
Well, that's because every part of the TV has been so combined and miniaturized to the point now that everything is basically one gigantic circuit board. So you break it, it's pretty much toast.
Yeah, they don't last that long either.
I don't know. I had some TVs that had ridiculously short lives.
I don't know. We had our console TV was from one before I was born, and we put it out on the curb in 2009. It still worked.
Let's see. From when we must have went through about a half dozen TVs growing up. And I don't know, maybe I just radiated aura that killed old console TVs. I don't know.
Magnetic personality.
I don't know. I kill light bulbs. I know that.
Let's see.
Nothing's freakier than driving down the road and watching the lights up just as they get close to you burn out as you go past. I've had this experience.
Actually, so have I. That's kind of weird.
I don't remember going through TVs, but I do remember going through a lot of VCRs.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
The blinking numbers.
Oh, I never had the blinking numbers. I could set them. The thing is, I would swear I'd have a VCR for 6 months and it would start eating tapes.
I think that was what they did in general. They got hungry.
Usually I shake my fist at them when they start working better.
And that's what the baseball bat was for.
I went
used to
through
have
like
paper
6
fan.
copies of Star Trek 6 because I kept eating it.
I had one that wouldn't eat anything; it would just vomit them up. I put the tape in, it would automatically eject them. It's like,
And then I got one that wouldn't eat tapes, but my problem is every time I would set it to record anything 30 minutes or more, it would spontaneously stop recording after 10 minutes. And I kept taking it back, and they kept bringing it back, saying, there's nothing wrong with it. Bullshit.
I look at cat watching Bob Ross.
It's calming.
So,
Happy trees.
Oh,
Okay, so that was one ginormous tangent.
yes. So,
Anyway,
talking about the 13th Doctor, there's another major element besides the actress, which is showrunner Chris Chibnall. Thankfully, we actually are lucky enough that, one, he's worked in Doctor Who in the past, and two, we've been talking about Broadchurch. He was the creator of that. So,
Chibnall, back, in early Doctor Who, was basically Russell T Davies. He was to Russell T Davies what Mark Gatiss is to Stephen Moffat.
at least for Torchwood, he didn't do a huge amount in the main series, unless he did more behind-the-scenes stuff than I know about.
I think he did, because when he came over to Torchwood, he was coming from Doctor Who. He did have a few things. He did write in the classic series, but I remember the fact that it was, you would get interviews, and you'd get interviews from Davis and Chibnall, so
I don't remember what was
it was, he was mostly kind of Davies' toady. And then when Torchwood started up, basically Russell said, I can't run the day-to-day on this. Chris, do you want to run it? And he did an okay job at the time. He wrote some really crappy episodes, but then he wrote some unbelievably good episodes. Like the episode of Torchwood that we, by and large, completely and totally despise, Cyberwoman was Chibnall's creation. At the same time, in the same season, Countryside, an episode we haven't reviewed, but I've seen it, and it was the freakiest episode of Torchwood ever, was also his. And when I think one of the writers backed out of Series 2, Chisel wound up writing about half. So...
I think he might have, yeah.
And he was script editing the entire time, too.
Now, one thing that does stand out to me, especially looking at Broadchurch, but I think it was present in Doctor Who as well, is that he doesn't, I don't think, do much to really challenge gender norms in storytelling, which isn't necessarily a universally bad thing, because a decent writer can still stick in a wheelhouse and do things, but with the first female Doctor, I do think that is potentially an issue unless he has plans on how to get around that. Because if you're doing the first female incarnation of a traditionally male character, challenging gender norms is kind of a mandatory part of that.
Well, yeah, the Doctor has to be the Doctor regardless of gender. You can't change everything about the Doctor.
No, true.
And not have half your group go, okay, this is not the show I liked. Mm-hmm. Mind you, the Doctor himself has evolved over the previous 12 incarnations.
But the way that the secondary and tertiary characters, especially the villains, react to her is going to be different than the Doctor and the
Yes. Oh yes, there's going to be different reaction from the people around them. But the character of the Doctor itself cannot change that much.
Right.
The demeanor can change, but the base nature of the Doctor cannot change.
Right. So hopefully that's something he keeps in mind and doesn't write, a male-led, female-supported Doctor Who with a female Doctor. Because that would be a very different show.
Yes. And that is one of my concerns, is how is the writers going to handle what you may or may not know is that Chibnall is completely changing the way the Doctor Who production works. He is basically, at this point, the turnover that's going on is bigger than the turnover when Russell T Davies handed over to Stephen Moffat. Like that point, they have lost both of their executive producer, new showrunner, new Doctor, new companion, but also a lot of the line production staff is being changed over too, and that's different from how it was in 2010.
I wish we knew some more of the writers that are going to be backing him up, but I don't think any of them are announced at this time.
No, he hasn't announced anybody.
I imagine he has some names in mind, but I don't know if any of it's finalized.
I know he has said on record that he wants to do a United States-style writing pool.
Right.
Which means that instead of people penning individual episodes, they basically sit down in a bullpen, pitch ideas, draft it out, and then are assigned which story they're going to write.
It's 2017. A bullpen is probably Google Docs.
I don't know. As far as we know, they can have their own freaking Discord channel or our Trello page, or God knows, there's like a million ways of doing business by social networks.
I'm just picturing now just like Doctor Who, like they're just sitting in a pub pitching ideas and someone's writing them down, and that's how Doctor Who's written from now on.
On a really watered out napkin. They can't read.
Right.
Like, I think there was something
Actually, that was how Doctor Who got written for a lot of the 70s. I hate to break it to you.
See, they'll just bring it back.
They take somebody out to the pub and then go, Douglas, we got the script in and it doesn't work. And it's got to be on set in 3 days. Can you fix this up? And it's like, all right.
I thought Douglas locked himself in a windowless room with a pot of black coffee.
That was after that conversation. This was the showrunner telling Douglas that this is what he had to do. Douglas, we've decided to keep Lala Ward on as the new Romana. The problem is the script that we have doesn't actually have an intro explaining this. Can you pull one out in about 6 hours? That's basically Douglas Adams' career on Doctor Who, by the way.
Yeah. You guys
He had one chance to write something ahead of time, and they writer's strike and killed it.
All right. Tim and Aaron, you guys got any comments on Chibnall or anything you've experienced? Broadchurch, Doctor Who, Torchwood, Law and Order UK, if you've seen it, or any of his other stuff, Camelot.
Oh, I saw the first couple of episodes of Camelot. That was terrible.
Terrible in like writing specific, or
it was trying to take the Arthurian legend and make it into Game of Thrones, and doing it very badly.
You're talking about a TV series called Camelot?
Yeah,
Yes.
Camelot,
That
the
one,
TV
yeah.
series.
Yeah, is that what they keep doing with the movies lately?
That's what they just did with the newest one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it also
exactly.
kind of stank.
That's what they're doing with everything these days. They're trying to make everything into Game of Thrones.
Yeah, they
I'm
introduced.
so glad they're not coming out with a new Conan movie or series right now, because it would be Conan the Game of Thrones.
Okay, now I'm kind of picturing Doctor Who Game of Thrones. The doctor just comes in, starts calling everyone a cunt.
I think what we're going to see is a lot.
No, we would have seen that during Capaldi.
Yeah, only
That's true.
Capaldi
What is it with
stuff around.
Capaldi? Yeah.
Which would at least be fun. You'd just be going off on rants.
I mean,
a couple
and
episodes.
granted, he
I could
would
go
have
for that.
he would have had the practice for that.
Right? That would have
The
been
thing
fun.
is, I saw an interview with Peter Capaldi recently, and he said, this is amazing. This is the first time I've gotten to swear
Yeah,
in
he's like he
3
hasn't
years.
sworn in 4 years.
He's gonna be going home and just locking himself from going, fuck.
Yeah. Just going full
Well,
threats.
it is an ongoing thing with people that play the Doctor, is the fact that even when they're not in front of the camera, even when they're just walking down to get a gallon of milk, they have to maintain this level of at least partially being who they are on camera.
Didn't Tom Baker quit smoking because he didn't want kids to see the Doctor smoking? I believe I heard.
Yes. And I think he mostly stopped drinking.
I think so too.
I know that it's like he had a problem with the fact that he didn't want to be seen in a pub while he was the Doctor. So they gave him this pub that actors went to that, you can, normally, they ask no questions, the media's not allowed in, that kind of thing. And so he goes there, orders a pint, and a guy next to him at the bar turns to him, and he thinks it was a court judge or something, just turns to him and goes, "My dear doctor." What the hell do you do with that?
Right.
And it's been the same for almost all the people that play the Doctor, is because they are seen as this huge role model. They need to really curb how they're public facing. I mean, you look at Capaldi, and he had just come off of the thick of it when he started Doctor Who, and he played the most foul-mouthed character short of Gordon Ramsay. And he had to go from that to the Doctor. That's like almost a 180 turn. I don't think Jodie Whittaker is going to have that problem because I haven't seen her be particularly foul-mouthed.
In Attack the Block, one of the gangsters tells her off for having a potty mouth.
Really?
Yeah.
How long ago was she in?
That was 2011.
Okay.
She drops a few F-bombs in Broadchurch, but no more than, probably less than you'd expect from the average woman in her character situation.
Yeah.
Aaron, you mentioned seeing Camelot. Anything about the writing you think is a risk that might carry over into Doctor Who, or do you...
Sloppy depiction of characters. Kind of, I think where they got it wrong was they tried to take things to too much of an extreme. They bent over backwards to kill off like this one character we never heard of. I I think it was Guinevere's. I think it was maybe Arthur's mom or something like that. That was kind of like she's in the legend, of course, obviously, but like she in the TV series, she just kind of appears, has like a few moments of I'm an important character, and then dies, just because it has to be like Game of Thrones. And then you've got like Arthur and Guinevere who have sex for the first time, and then they've got to figure out a way of tricking, not Arthur and Guinevere, it was Lancelot and Guinevere, and then they have to find a way of tricking Arthur into...
that story in the original Legends.
Mm-hmm. And they have to try to find a way of tricking him into thinking that she's a virgin and everything like that, so... And it was just like a lot of little nitty-gritty stuff that I'm not particularly interested in, to be honest. It was the characters were very kind of boring too. I mean, I don't know. It was just and Arthur is pretty much a very emo, blonde-haired emo guy who I don't know. Looks like he should be Lancelot instead of Arthur. And you've got I believe you do have Morgan too. So, and it was very forgettable. It was just a forgettable kind of knockoff of Game of Thrones. A lot of sex, a lot of violence, but very little substance. And based on the Arthurian legend, I mean, it's kind of dry and everything, but there's a lot of mythology surrounding that you could feed into it.
Right.
A lot of British mythology that may not be connected to the Arthurian legend, but can be interwoven with it, like druids and whatnot.
And it plays a lot into some of the more where you take some biblical stories and kind of stretch some of the things to mythological extremes, and you can do that. You can do a lot of that in a TV show. Make it, if they wanted to make it the Christian version of Supernatural, just as an example. Not saying they should have, but that's a thing you could do with King Arthur.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to point out that Camelot was actually started before Game of Thrones started. They started in the same month of the same year, but Starz did beat them to the punch with Camelot starting on the first of the month, and Game of Thrones starting mid-month, so they were contemporaries. So that was a good 6 years ago now that he did Camelot, and that was well before he did Broadchurch. That was actually before he came back to Doctor Who during the Moffat era to do Pond Life, the little mini episodes prior to Series 7, Dinosaurs on a Spaceship, Power of Three, and the PS to Angels Take Manhattan. The actual part of that episode that was good was, of course, the part they didn't air.
I think what's really good about his writing with Broadchurch is that it brings all the characters together. Just really kind of ties everything together very nicely. Everyone has a little story, and then there's always more to be revealed too. So
it does seem to be that his writing style has evolved and gotten better.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
He still has the occasional slip-up. I mean, if you look at what I just quoted from 2012, the Pond Life stuff was okay. Dinosaurs on a Spaceship, even though it has the world's stupidest name, was actually a pretty good episode.
Mm-hmm.
PS is considered to be, the best thing that never got filmed for Doctor Who. And
did you mention Power 3? Yeah.
I was about to say, on the other hand, Power of 3 was full of fail.
Mm-hmm.
And that is one thing I am worried about with Chibnall writing, is that we're going to see a lot more of these anti-climax that he did with Power of 3, where it's just, he builds up and it just petered. Because I really don't want to see that anymore.
Right.
Well, I think we haven't heard from Tim, so let's have Tim's point of view.
Well, one thing I noticed about in Broadchurch that I liked in the writing-wise was that things were introduced, and then they weren't followed up on immediately, but they were followed up on soon enough that you didn't like forget what they were. Like it's sort of like
That will be a change from the Mafia era if things are followed up on.
You know, so
Definite improvement there.
It was like the mystery was still held, like, but is like the thing was like, hey, this kid had a skateboard, and then a few minutes later you see the skateboard in someone else's closet. You know, and it's things like that. So like, it wasn't like the things that were introduced then dropped, and they have no significance. Like, so I think that was.
Well, the thing about crime drama is you do have to have that kind of thing.
Right.
Broadchurch is a crime drama, therefore you need to have those clues. And not too different from writing a mystery, though it's more procedural.
That's why I forgive some of the red herrings a little more than I would if it were just a random drama, because it's a style of show that requires a lot of red herrings. Matt, any input on Chibnall?
Not particularly, although I will say that I was looking at Torchwood. Where was it?
It was a little farther down the screen, yeah.
Exit Wounds, I don't remember that one.
That was the series finale for season 2.
Okay. I guess it was alright. Fragments?
Was the one immediately before that.
Yeah,
It was like the two-parter.
Okay. Adrift. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
That was the one with James Marsters.
Yeah.
I think all of those involve James Marsters to one extent or another.
And End of Days.
Oh yeah, that's right. He was involved in 2 different stories: his intro and then the 2-parter.
Then as we mentioned, Countryside, Cyberwoman, and then Day One. Wasn't that the first episode?
That was the
No, that's the second
episode.
episode.
That was the episode where Gwen becomes a member of the team, rather than just a person who encounters the team.
Yeah, that's the one with the aliens that were basically an STD.
Yeah.
That was not a great episode either. But yeah,
And there is also, especially with things like Day One and Cyberwoman, I get the idea that a lot of those were pitched by Russell and then just written by Chris. Although there's obviously no way we can really test that without interviewing them.
yeah, I suspect that the two of them sat down and discussed what they wanted to do. And also, you have to remember that was very early in Torchwood, when they really didn't have any idea of what they were doing.
All they knew was Doctor Who with sex.
That was Doctor Who for an adult audience with Captain Jack in Cardiff. That was pretty much all they knew at that point. So they basically threw shit at the wall to see what stick. And it's like, okay, that didn't work, that didn't work, that didn't work, that worked, we'll go with that.
And then we'll kill all of them.
That's why they introduced the Weevils in Torchwood and then never did anything with them, because they weren't popular.
Does that about end us on the general Chibnall comments, or does anyone have any?
What about serialization? Lately, we've been seeing kind of more and more of a move towards that, especially with this recent series where we have a collection of 3 episodes forming one story.
That's true. And I do think one of the interviews mentioned that Chibnall did want to lean more toward a serialized format, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, he does.
Like a single overarching story for all of the episodes.
Or a major overarching story with US TV, which shows like Arrow, The Flash,
Right.
Gotham, that kind of thing, and maybe even little mini arcs,
And of course,
like they've been doing on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
And of course, to contrast what Doctor Who's done since 2005, you would either have episodic stories with a single element tying them together to the finale. I would say one of the worst executions was series 5 and 6, where you would have kind of 2 categories of episodes that were part of a serialized plot, and then the episodic episodes that you basically, the ones you could skip and the ones you couldn't, basically. And they weren't really well integrated with one another. that kind of improved throughout the Moffat line run to the point where
it didn't improve until Series 8, Bill. Series 7 was just bad.
Series 7 wasn't as bad as Series 6 in terms of the episodes you can skip and episodes you can't thing. It was, I think, a little. It wasn't perfect, but I think it was a step up, and then Series 8 was another step up. Which is where in Series 8 you got a whole bunch of written by Stephen Moffat because instead of keeping all of the plot to his personal episodes, he would integrate it with other people's. Apparently he didn't trust other people to write the season plot, but...
Yeah... That's a little thing about Moffat.
But hopefully with this bullpen format, you're not necessarily going to run into that issue.
I'm hoping.
It's like, you get the one-off episode that we don't care about, and we'll write the important episodes.
But also, the thing is that with the bullpen, it usually means that writers can help compensate for each other's flaws. Usually. Which generally means that you don't have as many great episodes, but you don't have low points.
Right, and hopefully it's an even mix of men and women, hopefully some people with, some different ethnic experiences to the point where if someone's only ever written men before, there's someone else to compensate and help them, write a little more evenly, which is usually not something you get if a single person is writing an episode. Unless they have a brilliant editor.
Yeah. The thing about having single people write episodes the way it is you tend to start noticing their personal style a lot more.
Especially someone that writes a lot like Gaddis, Moffat. Trying to think somebody else that's written a lot of episodes recently. I know there's a few of them.
I've mentioned it a few times on our podcast that Moffat has a lot of tropes that he really tends to like. Body horror. We've mentioned repeatedly how he likes bootstrap paradoxes to the point that we just refer to them as Moffat loops now.
When we reviewed the Dr. Falls, we talked about the fact that it was basically a guest visit of all of Moffat's favorite tropes.
Yeah. It's just, you get that, once you start seeing that, it's like, okay, yep, this smells like a Moffat episode. Yep.
So hopefully the bullpen works together enough that that's not the case going forward. It certainly could be if they don't work very well together, then they may discuss the season plot and otherwise work on their own, but hopefully they'll be better organized than that.
It is a concern because this is not something that, as far as I'm aware, the BBC has done before. Doing a U.S.-style writing bullpen like this. I mean, it's standard procedure in any form of network TV these days. Even sitcoms tend to use writing bullpens.
I think the closest I've heard with British TV is where you get something like Sherlock, where there's 3 writers and they more or less work together, where each one writes the majority of an episode, but they're collaborating on the whole thing. But that's 3 writers writing 3 episodes a season. It's going to be very different for 12 episodes a season in Doctor Who.
Mm-hmm. And, for a writing bullpen, that's not a lot. I mean, look at how much the U.S. cranks out per season.
Yeah.
I mean, you get, 22 to 26 episodes, usually, for a show? Every now and then you get one that has a little... 22 is the most common
number I see.
What's that?
22, I think, is the most common number I see.
Yeah, that tends to be what the CW goes for. I think Gotham tends to be a little longer because Fox likes 26, but...
I think Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is also 26.
Yeah. But then again, you're dealing with the big 4 networks there, so they can throw a full 26 seasons worth of budget at a show. Whereas the CW has to kind of, limp by.
Now, one of the negative scenarios that could happen with a bullpen is if they don't go out of their way to get differing views, and Chibnall hires a whole bunch of people that write similarly, have similar experiences. one of the things that would be common would be, if it's 10 white men and 1 woman or something, then it's a lot more likely to have certain flaws repeating throughout episodes because you don't have that division of experiences and people looking for different things.
Yeah, if your writing bullpen, is 8 guys from Manchester, yeah, unless you're writing about a show that takes place in Manchester, you're not going to get a lot of world view, so to speak.
And I don't know if Jodie had, clearly she's not as old, but I don't know if she has both the experience and the presence that someone like Peter Capaldi did, to the point of, if there's something wrong with the episode, of, saying, hey, let's rewrite this scene. I don't know that much about her behind the scenes, to be honest.
Well, she only has 10 years of experience as an actor.
Which I think
Peter
might
Capaldi,
be more than Matt Smith had, but definitely a lot less than someone like Peter Capaldi or
Peter Capaldi, if the writer would start to object to what he said, he could basically hit him over the head with his Academy Award for writing. That's the thing. Peter Capaldi carried a lot of creative cred because he was both an actor and a writer, and he won awards for both. Jodie Whittaker, as far as I can tell, has not really won much in the way of awards, if anything. She's been nominated a few times.
Yeah.
Do you know if Broadchurch has won anything? Anybody know about that?
I thought that they've won a few awards. Didn't they win some BAFTAs?
They may have.
I know they've been in the BAFTAs.
They've been nominated, I thought.
Was nominated for 7. Olivia Colman won for Best Actress. David Bradley for Best Supporting Actor. Show was named Best Drama Series, so it won 3.
Yeah, it won Best Drama Series in 14, Best Leading Actress in 14, Best Supporting Actor in 14, and it was nominated for Radio Times Audience Award, but did not win.
Yeah, it lost to Day of the Doctor. So, yeah.
And of course, that's David Bradley being mentioned there. He's our new first Doctor for Christmas. So.
Oh yeah, that's going to be pretty awesome.
By the way, it has also won some craft awards, but those are, for, production design and other stuff like that. Chris Chibnall was nominated for Best Writer Drama, but did not win.
Sci-Fi, it wouldn't be a Hugo.
Yeah, it's Broadchurch's prime drama, so while Doctor Who can go to the Hugos, Broadchurch doesn't.
Right.
So BAFTA is pretty much the best you can get. But, she was nominated for the Crime Thriller Award for Best Supporting Actor for her role in Broadchurch, but did not win.
Do you know who won?
No, because I'm not sure what year it was. Let's see. Looking. Amanda Bullmore for Scott and Bailey won.
Oh, I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah. Mind you, there were 2 Broadchurch nominations in that one, and there one of 1. And Broadchurch won nearly every other category.
So besides the writing bullpen, I think the last major factor worth discussing is that this is new territory for Doctor Who in the idea of story. A story led by a female character is going to have differences, especially compared to something very formulaic like Doctor Who. We still don't know whether it's a male or a female companion. The Mirror has said they believe a certain male actor has been cast as a companion, but so far...
But that's the Mirror.
Yeah, so far nobody has stepped up to support that, so I'm treating that as nothing worth talking about until the BBC or at least someone like Coldbox that we trust can say we have evidence in favor of this.
Yeah, believing the Mirror without any collaborating evidence is like believing the National Enquirer. You don't.
And just because a companion, even if they are announced, that doesn't mean that they're not an Adric, a Rory, a Mickey. You know, there might still be a lead female companion that we just don't know about. So we don't know about that
surprise
in the
me
formula.
If they do go with a main male companion, not for any romance reasons, but just so the fact that the male audience has someone to identify with.
Right.
I was hoping that whoever the companion is, that they'll have sort of like a romance relationship, like the Second Doctor and Jamie.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have to see how they're going with this. We don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways that can go with it. I am kind of happy that we did not switch over to Whittaker last season, not because I don't think she would have done a good job, but because, especially with the way Stephen Moffat writes and the unique aspects of Bill's character, I would not want the first lesbian companion written by Stephen Moffat to be with a female doctor, because we would have yet another pining for the Doctor season.
Oh, yeah. I said that if they had gone with a female doctor for the 12th Doctor in 2013, I would have been absolutely horrified. Because I know how Moffat writes. And he can't write a good female character without going God mode with her.
At least not as a main... I think there are a few female supporting characters. I think Jenny Flint is pretty good, for instance, someone like that who doesn't, he doesn't require a huge amount of writing, but the more he writes for someone, it snowballs and picks up certain aspects.
Oh yeah, River Song's first appearance when he was writing under Russell T Davies, I actually liked the character. However, it didn't take me long into her second appearance under Moffat's control that character started to grate on me, and by the end of Series 5, I began to absolutely hate her. Just because he basically heaped all of his love onto the character. To the point that it just, I don't know. I can't talk about that character without getting angry to this day.
And just in general, looking at the most recent few episodes, what we've heard about the Christmas special, what we saw in the recent two-parter with specifically focusing on John Sims' master's misogyny and a few other things, I feel like if Moffat were to write Jodie Whittaker's Doctor, we would get a very preachy season. I'm hoping that Chris Chibnall can toe the line of being socially aware but not being so preachy as to hit people over the head, write a bad story, and turn people who are on the fence away just because of the preachiness.
Personally, I want to see Jodie Whittaker come off from a regeneration going, okay, this is new, deal with it, move on.
Right.
What's next, you know?
And
this is a Time Lord, it's technically absolutely normal. The only thing that would be a bit surprising is this would be a first experience for the Doctor personally.
Right.
And still not a ginger.
Right.
That's what I keep reading about.
Ginger.
And what's funny is in Broad... I don't know if you would consider her ginger. She had reddish hair, at least. I don't think it was quite ginger, but it was reddish.
Darkening it for Broadchurch.
I don't know what her real hair color is, because I've seen her brunette, I've seen her reddish, I don't know if that's auburn or what, but we've seen in the Doctor Who reveal, and I'm sure this was intentional, because I doubt they just filmed her with a random hair color as blonde. So
I don't know, maybe she's actually bald and just wears a lot of wigs.
Maybe she's just like Tennant and likes to just regenerate certain parts at random times.
But, I mean, if we assume that the trailer was being true to the character, because the body language seemed different from her other roles, so I would say that's her Doctor body language, at least as she develops the character. She hasn't filmed much with her yet.
I will remind you that a lot of people that have played the Doctor very close to their own base personality. Just because if you don't, it's almost impossible to switch back and forth during filming.
Although I don't think Colin is quite as belligerent as his TV Doctor was.
No, that was John Nathan Turner's fault.
I think Big Finish Sixth Doctor is a lot closer to Colin's core personality.
Yes. Well, the whole thing was he was supposed to, over a couple of seasons, eventually mellow into what was supposed to be his personality.
Yeah.
But Michael Graves said, "No, you're out." So he was out. It was just a bad idea, and that's John Nathan Turner's fault, and that was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So.
But where I'm going with this, she seems to change her hair color enough that she certainly could have been ginger, but they made a conscious decision to be something different.
Yeah, and I hope they make that not ginger comment, because that's kind of been a running gag. Although Capaldi didn't, but then again, Capaldi had his own identity issues. I swear his doctor still thought half the time he was Matt Smith's. He still thought of himself as being young and everything. You can kind of tell by the way he spoke. So there, guys?
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I can find a link that looks reliable for Jodie's natural hair color, which isn't an important thing, but I've been wondering it for the past few weeks, so I'd like to know, but I don't know if any of these sites would necessarily change.
I don't know. Her appearance when she went to the Independent Film Awards, she was very dark-haired, and that was in 2014, so...
Was Broadchurch film, or no, she wouldn't have been filming Broadchurch if she had very dark hair, but and that's and all of these are by a certain year, so it's whatever hair color she had that year. Altogether, it's not that important what her natural hair color is, but I was just wondering.
As far as we know, it might be white, and she just has a whole bunch of hair dyes.
Yeah.
One of those people that went white at like 25.
How old is Jodie Whittaker?
I believe she's 35.
Yeah, 35 would be correct.
Oh, she's younger than me.
Younger than me.
36.
Yeah. I remember that feeling, realizing the new doctor, I think it was Matt Smith, was younger than me, and I went,
Talk about Still Not Ginger made me get this image of, after this generation, the Doctor's going to regenerate into Laramere, or is it Laramore, that monster from Looney Tunes that was all
all like red.
like the heart-shaped, red-haired.
Red-haired.
I thought that was Gossamer.
Gossamer.
The one with the sneakers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sneakers.
No.
The Doctor's final regeneration will be Sweetums from the Muppet Show. There's a mental image for you.
You need my text? Oh, crap.
There you go.
So yeah, does anybody have any major concerns over the idea of the new format of a female doctor with a male or with a female companion and things that they think are likely to be bollocksed up?
My main fear is that they're going to be trying to do too much all at once from a fresh crew that has no experience, and then it's just going to be a long series of little botch-ups.
Or no Doctor Who experience, at least.
Yeah, no Doctor Who experience, and there's going to be a series of small botch-ups that are just going to start ripping the season apart.
I am truly concerned about that.
Yeah.
I would have really loved it if Capaldi had stayed for one more season.
Yeah,
just let the new writing staff, the new production crew, everybody get a season under their belt.
And look at all the serialized shows that have only lasted 1 or 2 seasons before being abandoned, like Invasion. Does anyone?
But it's not anything that's raising any
Basically,
flags in my
Invasion of
mind.
the Body Snatchers type deal, where people like start finding their neighbors' bodies in the lakes or in the surrounding river or something like that, and like glowing stingrays are basically taking their neighbors away and copying them or making duplicates of themselves. So it's just, but it's one of those things that was big on the big serialization craze that was in the mid 2000s. And it went for, I think, maybe 2 seasons, and then it was just dropped.
Well, We
Jericho
don't
is
think
another
the Doctor Who's in any danger of getting dropped anytime soon.
If anything, they might force out both the Doctor and the showrunner and replace it with a more traditional approach.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, part of the thing with doing this with a new team is if Chris Chibnall screws up, the first thing that the marketing people and the bigwigs at the BBC are going to look at is, well, we tried this new format with a female doctor and it failed, and they're not going to look past that because we've seen that over and over with superhero movies. I think sci-fi movies in general have had that stigma. And there are people coming out with Wonder Woman they're like, I'm so glad I don't have to keep justifying to my boss that I want a female to star in a movie.
Yeah. That's the whole thing. Jodie Whittaker's first season is going to be put under a microscope by critics and fans and the people at the BBC's head office. And if she flubs it, if Chibnall flubs it, or if the writers flub it, there's going to be hell to pay.
Yeah.
And it's going to come down on Jodie Whittaker's head, I'm sorry to say. If it wasn't her fault, it'll be her fault.
Shoot, look at the people that still harass Colin Baker on Twitter because they don't like the Sixth Doctor's writing.
Oh, yeah.
And that was over 30 years, 35 years ago.
And that was a combination of John Nathan Turner and Eric Sayward.
And it was absolutely nothing to do with Colin Baker's decisions. He fought against every step. Now, I don't know how hard because it was his job, but he disagreed with all of those steps.
That's the thing about JNT, by the way, is he was one of these force of nature guys as showrunner. It was kind of his way or the highway. And that's one of the reasons Tom Baker had to leave, was because he and John Nathan Turner kept butting heads over production. And it basically became clear that John Nathan Turner was here to stay and he had to go. And, he made all those changes, like giving the Doctor a specific uniform outfit and deciding what that outfit was going to be, and much to Colin Baker's chagrin, the worst outfit ever. And he really micromanaged the show.
Some might disagree that Tom had the worst outfit when considering what it was like by the time it got to Colin.
The fact that John Nathan Turner kept having to go back to the tailor and say, no, make it worse.
Like, you can look directly at Tom Baker's ugly maroon uniform. You can't always look directly at Colin Baker's. Not in bright sunlight.
The Technicolor Dreamcoat.
It's like looking directly into the eclipse. You need special glasses.
Now,
question mark.
none of the showrunners that have been in the new series has ever been that much control. Even Moffat. Moffat came close on a couple of occasions, but he wasn't that low.
The worst thing Russell did was, I want pigmen.
Yeah, he would occasionally do something that he would think would be a cool idea, and it would fall on his ass. Ooh, farting aliens! Or let's send out something to Blue Peter and have them design a monster. Yeah, that didn't work either. He would have those. He also had a lot of good ideas. And remember, this was still the early days of Doctor Who, so they had no idea if anything was going to work or not.
Right.
All of Christopher Eccleston's run was throwing shit at the wall and seeing what stuck.
The worst thing Moffat was a control freak about was the character that only he wrote.
Actually, he had a bunch of those.
Well, the main character that only he wrote, Miss Song.
Yeah,
Sorry,
but
Professor Song.
he also did it for the Paternoster gang.
No, he let Gaddis write for them.
Oh, that's right, he did. I'd forgotten that. Well, it was either... It never went to any of the secondary writers. And God help me, Gaddis couldn't write a Doctor Who episode to save his life. At least not under Moffat. I mean, he was like the ooey bowl of Doctor Who episodes. Everything he touched turned to crap.
Gaddis wrote a lot of middle of the road things.
And then he wrote Sleep No More.
Yeah, Sleep No More, I would say, is his worst. his best is probably the one he wrote under Russell, Charles Dickens.
Yeah,
Unquiet
Dead. His first thing. It's funny. You watch Gaddis, and there's just a steady decline of his writing quality.
Actually, we did agree that his most recent was one of his best, but that was because he pitched his own episode with the Ice Warriors rather than just, generic pseudo-historical number 16.
Yeah, he was kind of good. He was kind of known for writing his historicals. No, the best thing Gaddis did in the Doctor Who thing was the Adventures in Space and Time.
Oh yeah, that's not an episode, but it actually is influencing the canon now with the new First Doctor and such. Hopefully they do, if they have a second Doctor, they do recast, because they didn't put a huge amount of effort into the casting of the second Doctor for that story, or for that docudrama.
I'd still say Sean Pertwee for Third Doctor.
Mm-hmm. If the Third Doctor appears on the Christmas special, we're going to have a problem, because that means they're just condensing the past 50 years into one episode.
No, they didn't really do that properly in the 50th anniversary special, so...
Yeah. So since we're at 1:20 and we need to be packed up by 1:30, I'd like to open up if the audience has any questions or additions to
Comments,
what we've talked about.
concerns?
Yeah.
I have a bad feeling that writers are not going to be able to handle this, and there's probably not going to be any females. So it really doesn't. It bothers me more that there's probably not going to be more women on the staff than the fact that they've cast a woman as the Doctor in the first place.
Yeah, and it's
kind of superficial.
The fact that it's a huge turnover means it's possible, but unless Chibnall makes a concentrated effort to make sure that happens, they're probably going to revert to the normal status quo. The boys' club of writing, and whoever they know.
I hope not. I hope he does make an effort.
I would hope
get
so too, but I
a more
don't
balanced writing staff.
Hopefully someone's paying attention to social media and realizing how many fans are upset by how few women have been writing for the show.
I think they've only been paying attention so far as that they actually cast a woman, because that's really the only thing I can see that drove this in the first place, was them finally casting somebody. But then again, like this, what writers are they going to pull in that will actually be able to decently handle her as the Doctor? Because the Doctor as a man has been forceful, has been sometimes a raging asshole to people. If you write a female Doctor like that, all you're going to hear people complain that, oh my God, she's a whore. They
turned the Doctor into PMS. Never mind that it's the Doctor's personality that was already there.
Exactly.
That's what people are going to say.
And if there's just men writing it, how are they going to be able to handle nuance well with this?
Right.
Are people even going to notice, because they might just be pissed off that there's a whole bunch of guys still writing a female Doctor?
Right.
I think no matter what, unless he really, really realizes what he should do with it, we're probably going to see just one run with her, because everybody's going to just shit on her. And I have a bad feeling that's what's going to happen.
And sadly, it wouldn't be her fault either.
It wouldn't be her fault. But I have a feeling it's going to be looked at as sort of an experiment in social media sort of thing. And they'll be like, oh, nope, that didn't work. Let's pick somebody else.
That is my concern as well, if this falls flat.
Diane?
Yep.
Do we know, I apologize if this has already been covered, do you know if the Anna's going to be able to
We don't know yet. A tabloid of ill repute has said that a source told them there was a male actor that was cast as a companion, but even if it's true, we don't know if it's the primary or secondary companion, and we also don't have we have no reason to think it's true at this point.
Yeah, we've gotten many false news stories from that particular tabloid, so
I wish they
we
would go
tend to take anything that they see and wait to see it verified by somebody else, and nobody else has stepped forward on that. So as far as we know, Companion is still uncast.
Although Jodie did once say that if she were to choose between having a horse and having a robot butler, she'd rather have a robot butler. So maybe she'll have a robot butler.
Well, I mean, like an alien would be nice.
And I just realized that last season we kind of had a robot butler.
Yeah.
But
no, like somebody
Or more of a cyborg, but yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else. They tend to go to the same well of current 21st century some contemporary person, like even a different
I would
historical
really
person
be happy
again.
if they got a new, like a Victorian era companion again.
Yeah.
Or a future, I really like the idea of having a future companion and a Victorian or similar era companion and on the TARDIS at the same time. I think that's a great combination that worked really well in the second Doctor, and we really haven't seen anything like it since.
I am getting sick of the modern day London companion.
Yeah.
They've had enough of those in a row, please.
Yeah. Or another Romana. Like, apparently he can go back to Gallifrey now.
Yeah.
Why not pick another Time Lord to travel with them? Or, sorry, with her.
Find Romana 3.
Yeah. It's just Romana again. She just showed back up and said, you know what?
I miss Romana. Where's Romana been? What's she been up to?
Now I need to know what Juliet Landau's been up to.
Isn't she doing Big Finish?
She did a few, and then they started using Lala Ward again. So they haven't really explained in public as to why. I've heard rumors that
she does that.
I've heard rumors that there was behind-the-scenes drama of some sort, but if that's true, I don't know what it was.
We may never know. I mean, they could flip that on its ear too. Like, oh look, no, now Romana's male and the Doctor's female.
Right, and yeah, I mean, they could always go on to Romana 4.
Yeah.
Completely skip Lady Trey and just have someone completely different.
Yeah.
It looks like Juliet Landau's been doing some movies and some voice acting.
Just as long as it's not River again.
She's got Citizens and the Terror of Hallows Eve coming out. There are people talking about how a female Doctor would work with River Song, and I'm sure we'll eventually get an episode of her, but I'd rather it not be right away and it not be a major thing. There's like one episode in her third season or something I'd be cool with.
I'd be happy if it was like the Big Finish thing where she sort of, they don't ever interact, but they're in the same episode thing, and it's like they're kind of talking to each other, but they don't really do anything. And she knows it's the Doctor. They don't know who she is, and then they go their separate ways afterwards, and there's not really much.
I have not yet found the motivation to purchase any of the Big Finish stories that have River Song in them.
Well, the one with the 8th Doctor, I kind of had to, so. But yeah, she doesn't really, it's sort of the play of she knows who he is, but he doesn't know who she is. So she's sort of interacting with him, but not really interacting with them. And she's kind of interacting with him through somebody else, and it's kind of a messy sort of like you're trying to make it work, but you can't have them do anything because time.
Right.
So it is sort of a stupid mess because I think they're doing her with all of them now. Mm-hmm. I think the 7th Doctor one came out, the 6th Doctor is coming out.
Each box set of the Diary of River Song has new Doctors in it, so they may go as far back as having her, interact with the first Doctor, meet Susan. I mean, if there's a great writer behind it, now that Moffat's not the one writing the character, there could be different interesting things. I just don't have enough faith in the character to put my money out on the limb for.
To be fair, she's a lot more tolerable in the Big Finish episodes, I think. There's not that whole thing of with Moffat where it's like...
I want to see her meet Benny before she meets another Doctor.
That's true. I don't think they're going to do that, though. Like I said, they seem to be going backwards with the Doctors right now, because like I said, she was with 8. I think 7's just come out, and I think she's interacting with the 6th now or something.
She could show up in the next Bernie Summerfield box set. All right. So that about wraps up our time. If you're looking to get in touch with following us, I don't know if either of you have ever heard of us or been to any of our panels in the past. And of course, there's always the chance of new YouTube viewers when we upload it. You can find us as an Unearthly Podcast on YouTube, Unearthly Podcast on Facebook.com/Unearthly Podcast, Twitter.com/Unearthly Pod, Twitch.tv/Unearthly Podcast, or Patreon.com/Unearthly Podcast. For news updates, and of course with Patreon if you wanted to support us and help us do new things.
We might go to bigger conventions if we make enough money.
So, thanks for coming to those here in the Geek.Kon audience, and thanks for listening to those on the YouTube audience. And I think we can upload this to Twitch now with the new feature, so we can try that out too.
Yeah.